Here we go. In this video, we're going to talk about what is wrong with TCM education. This is a huge topic, and I think it might even get me in trouble a little bit. Saying that though, I think it's important to realize that our medicine is magical, but our education system is failing the students striving to study and become amazing at it. So let's talk about what's wrong with the system and how you can fill the gaps in your education to become the rockstar practitioner I know that you are. Now, this video is dedicated to elevating your practice, so please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the little bell to be notified of new videos that I put out every week about Japanese medicine. Also, I would love to know about topics that you would like me to discuss in future videos. So if you have techniques or topics or anything that you want me to talk about, please go ahead and comment in the description box below, and you might be featured in one of my upcoming videos. So before we talk about what's wrong with TCM education, I'd like to talk about why I decided to make this video. So by this time, you probably already know that I was trained and licensed in Japan before I came to the US. Because of that, I was privy to a system education that is steeped in the classics and based on hundreds of years of traditional learning practices. Now, when I came to the US to get my license here in Colorado, I was amazed at the lack of hands-on education that happened in the TCM educational system. Since then, I've been subsequently amazed time and time again through either my teaching experience or through my students at the lack in the TCM educational system, which is why I decided to make this video. So what is wrong with the TCM education system? Now, I am obviously biased because I absolutely love and adore the Japanese educational system in which I was trained. So rather than basing this video on my biases, let's look to the community. So recently on Facebook, I asked part of my community, what is wrong with the TCM educational system? I just threw that question out there to all of the different acupuncture groups I'm in, and I got a lot of answers. Actually, some of the answers I didn't even put on here. So I think we can agree now that there are a few issues with the TCM educational system. Now, before I go into the meat of this discussion, I'd like to just go on the record saying that I teach within a TCM school, and I really appreciate TCM education and the acupuncturists that it produces. So if you are an administrator or a teacher in a TCM educational school, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate what you do and why you do it. So please keep on teaching. We need more teachers that are really passionate about our medicine. With saying that, let's dive deep into some of the comments that I got. So as I go through each of these comments, I would really love to know which ones resonate with you and why. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I would really love to create this channel as a community forum so we can all work together to build a more sustainable and better educational system for everyone. All right, so in no particular order, let's start with this comment. Classics, classics. This is a really short but really powerful comment that I wholeheartedly agree with. Now, I know the practitioner who made this comment, and he is right on the money. We need to give more energy to teaching the classics from the classics. So no more Cliff Note versions. We need to have students actually opening up the classics and teachers teaching the classics. Revolutionary, right? I know. The reason why I say this is you just simply cannot understand the context of the protocols within TCM without understanding where those protocols were taken from. Many were taken from classical writings and have the foundations in really strong foundational texts. So traditionally in Japan, the blind were actually the people allotted to positions like acupuncture, moxibustion, and massage therapy. And the blind were actually required to memorize the classics via hearing because they weren't able to read and write. And so someone would literally, from memorization, read off the classics, and they would have to hear it hundreds of times in order to remember it. Now, obviously, practitioners during this time, some had vision, and they were a little bit quicker to learn these classics. Can you imagine having to memorize the classics? That just sounds insane. Now, of course, there are a few problems with teaching the classics within the TCM educational system. The first being, of course, that there aren't many teachers that have studied the classics and can really teach the classics. Another part of this, and this is kind of a side comment, is that most of the time the teachers who are teaching in school, they're actually not teaching what they're good at. They're teaching what the school needs them to teach. And so, for example, they might not even use scalp acupuncture, but the school needs a scalp acupuncture teacher. And so a practitioner who doesn't even use it will be put on the roster to teach a class that they don't even really know anything about. And they'll have to go back and review their own textbooks just to be able to teach the class. I think this is really failing our students. We should have teachers in the schools who really, really understand what they're teaching and are passionate about it. All right, so I digressed. We need to have teachers teaching the classics, right? This is a given. So ShinKyu University has actually started to bridge this gap by having my students study the classics chapter by chapter. We usually pick one book. Right now we're doing the Shanghanlun and going chapter by chapter through the book and helping each of the students understand that classic and then recording it and putting it onto the platform so that way students who missed that chapter or if you wanted to review that chapter can come back and review it. Now, my group, Yashinomichi, actually uses the Shanghanlun to study acupuncture, which I know is kind of revolutionary. But even if you just use it for your herbs, the Shanghanlun is an amazing book of knowledge. I really highly suggest that you start to study this book. Now, of course, when it comes to acupuncture, the Lingshu cannot be ignored as well. So if you have a mentor in your area, hint, hint, that's another thing missing from our TCM education, I highly suggest that you go to that mentor and start studying the Lingshu with them, or you come to a program like ShinKyu University to start filling in that gap. So this next comment right here is something I completely agree with. The lack of palpation and moxa teaching in school is a travesty. In fact, it was one of the first things I noticed when I helped international seminars when I was still living in Japan. I was really surprised how practitioners with 20 or 30 years of experience had little to no skill in palpation or in moxibustion. In fact, many practitioners are very heavy-handed, more than likely because they were traditionally massage therapists. Now, I'm not dogging massage therapy. I think it's a great way to develop your hands. In fact, classically in Japan, they would tell practitioners that they had to be massage therapists for 10 years to develop their hands. Then at that 10-year mark, they would then graduate into acupuncture. And from that point on, they would not be allowed to do massage because when you do massage, you really want to dig deep into the layers of the body and you stop being superficial with your palpation. And in acupuncture, right, we're not using palpation to influence the body. We're using it as a diagnostic tool, which is completely different than shiatsu massage. You know, a spin-off of this comment, of course, is that most practitioners don't even know what hara diagnosis is. Now, if you don't know, that's okay. Hara diagnosis is literally using the abdomen to diagnose the patient. It's actually far more accurate than the pulse and tongue could ever be. You know, they have a saying in Japanese acupuncture, the pulse changes when you sneeze, the tongue can change with a cup of coffee, but the hara is queen and she never lies. So if you're unsure of which one to believe, they always tell you to believe the hara or the abdomen, right? Learning hara diagnosis either from a Kampo practitioner or someone like myself in ShinKyu University is really vital when you go into Japanese acupuncture. And this is true of any style you are practicing, from shakudo to Japanese meridian therapy. They're going to take upon a lineage of hara diagnosis and really use it in their style. Now, according to the style and the lineage, hara diagnosis is of course going to be a little bit different, but in general, you can follow this rule of thumb. Superficial is better than deep. However, deep palpation is good to confirm your superficial. Ideally, you shouldn't have to have deep palpation in order to really confirm your findings. Now, I know this to be true for every single style of Japanese acupuncture that I have ever witnessed. However, there's always outliers and, people who don't follow this rule. And that's totally okay. I'm not dogging that style in particular. I'm just saying that every style that I've had the chance to study with so far has said, you start with a deeper palpation, but you want to graduate to a superficial one. Now, don't even get me started on moxa practice in TCM education. I was so surprised when I went to a school here in Colorado for 2 semesters in order to get my license back. And I found out how much time they spent on moxa. It was literally one class, one 3-hour class they spent on all moxa technique. To just give you a taste of how that's different in the Japanese educational model, I went to school for 3 years at Toyo ShinKyu Senmon Gakko, and we studied at least 2 hours a day, every day, 5 days a week in moxibustion or acupuncture or a combination of the two. And that means technical and applicable. So like we're practicing our technique and also practicing how to apply it. So important to practice this and have a teacher who can guide you in school. And it's just a travesty that Moxa is not included in most educational models. I think the most I've seen included in an educational model here in the US is perhaps a month of study. I've heard of a month in one school or here or there, but more recently it's more like a few hours, maybe 12 hours max. So the reason why I feel that moxa is so important, and many other acupuncturists do as well, is because moxa is actually older than acupuncture. Now, if you're curious as to why I think that, you can check out the mummy Utsi. And he's a picture of Utsi right up here. I think I'm saying that name right. He's actually over 5,300 years old. And he's right now in a museum in Italy. They actually found him off a cliff. I think someone tried to like hit him over the head and kill him or something. But he has tattoo marks all over his body. Now, at that time, we know for a fact that small metal tools, it was the Bronze Age, small metal tools were probably not prolific. More than likely, he used moxa to treat himself. And we know that moxa is probably more dominant simply because he had a lot of herbs, and he had also ingested a lot of herbs to get rid of some of the worms that were in his stomach. So for this specific reason, really, is the reason why ShinKyu University dives so deeply into moxa. I've had people call me the moxa queen before. I don't know if that's accurate, but I really do love moxa. I think it's a really powerful tool, just as, if not more powerful than acupuncture can be at times. It gives great clinical results in scar treatment, in cold deficiency disorders, in acute diseases like cold invasion or pernicious key invasion. It's just so amazing of a tool. And that's why in ShinKyu University we spend so much time on it. I actually have a study group every single month just to review your moxa practice, and a lot of videos within the platform to help you really start your practice. Now, if you don't know how to do direct moxa yet, I made a free video for you actually, and you can access that right up here. So that actually leads quite nicely into the third comment I really want to focus on today, and that is this comment right here. Now, this comment can't be more true. We need more hands-on technical appreciation and focus from day one in acupuncture school till graduation day and of course beyond. Hands-on technical practice. And I'm not talking about just simply standing in front of the room and saying, this is how you do a needle, go into your desk and do it, and when you're done, you can go home. I'm saying the teacher needs to be walking around the room, checking technical application, checking efficacy of each needle, seeing if the practitioner has the correct posture, if they're connecting with the key correctly. All of these things need to be focused on from day one. Now, the final thing I want to talk about was actually said really well by my dear friend Erlen Truitt. So let's just listen to him talking about it.
Because we're not turning out practitioners, we're turning out burned out students. And that is not who we want to see at the end of the program. These people are cooked, they're fried, they're not interested anymore. And so a new model of acupuncture education in this country, I think, is essential. So we're turning out people who are excited and interested and want to get out there and want to start practicing and want to start using this, as opposed to just being fried and saying, yeah, I graduated, I passed my boards, now I need 6 months off.
Now, I truly believe that what Erlen said is true. We need to conceptualize and actualize an educational model that creates students eager to learn and eager to get out into the marketplace and start healing patients, and of course, making profitable clinics. Instead, our educational system is creating students that are frustrated, burned out, and downright angry with a system that is unorganized and not really teaching them what they went to school to learn, which is a system of the hands. Our art of acupuncture and moxibustion is an art that is hands-on, and you have to learn it hands-on. We need technical practice in acupuncture, in moxibustion, in palpation, and in the efficacy of all three of those from day one until graduation. Now, of course, the best way to also create that educational system is to include ki or chi into the educational model again. We have stripped away the idea of ki or chi, the foundational energy that is the basis of our science. And it's really been to the detriment of our students and the graduates that have been coming out of our educational systems. The word ki or chi shows up thousands of times in many different classics. And to have that word stripped away is just a disservice. So even if you're still in school or even if you're graduated, I highly suggest that you start finding a mentor and a system that helps you to understand how to manipulate ki and how to utilize ki to help your clients now. So the reason why I feel that ki or chi has really been stripped from the educational system is the idea of a pernicious influence. Now, I don't know if you've come across this idea of a pernicious influence or really even understand it. When I bring it up to my students in TCM schools, they kind of have glazed eyes. They have no idea what I'm talking about. So I'm going to spend a second just explaining this. Now, in the Shanghanlun and many other classics, they bring up in the English translation this idea of pernicious influence. Now, if you actually read the classics, and again, I read in Japanese, but it's called jaki or shiechi, I believe is how it's pronounced in Chinese. Sorry if I butchered that. But this idea of jaki actually has ki, chi in the word. And somehow this word ja, which is the first word, kind of means evil or pernicious or like not good for you, okay? But for some reason or another, and I'm not really sure why, this idea of ki was stripped out of the English translation. So instead of saying pernicious ki, they just say pernicious influence. And the idea of ki has been completely stripped out of the English, which is huge because the idea of pernicious influence, sheichi, cold, heat, deficiency, and excess are the 5 fundamentals of acupuncture and moxibustion treatment. We're looking for those 5 fundamentals plus the fundamentals of toxins or doku. I don't know how to say that in Chinese, but these are really important to understand in your acupuncture and moxibustion treatment. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, again, read through a classic, and anytime you see the word influence, it's almost always the word chi that's supposed to be there. And I think that's a huge disservice to everyone in our medicine. Now, if you're watching this still at this point, I know that you're probably an amazing acupuncturist, really dedicated to your clients. And now you know that you have many gaps in your TCM education. In order to fill those gaps, unfortunately, there's only one thing that you can do, and that's find a mentor. So whether that's someone in your local area or myself through ShinKyu University, it's just really important to find someone that you not only vibe with, but really want to learn their style. So if you're into Japanese acupuncture, you're more than welcome to come to the ShinKyu University platform, or you can definitely stay with someone in your local area if you want to continue with TCM or Tan style or whatever style that you do. So lastly, I just want to talk about one other thing that I think is really becoming a barrier for many practitioners within TCM education, and that's imposter syndrome. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has imposter syndrome, but what I am saying is that many people feel that they're just not adequate at our medicine and they don't feel confident. And that can really distract from your practice, but it can also help it. So if you're interested in that, I really recommend you watching this video right here, and I talk about how I do have imposter syndrome and how it has actually helped me become a better practitioner. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the little bell to be notified of future videos. And until I see you next time, happy practicing.